Hi everyone, and a massive welcome to AXA Arctic Live for this Meet an Arctic Scientist live lesson. It's wonderful to have you all with us and join us at the UK Arctic Research Station in Ny-Ålesund on Svalbard. And we'll have a look at where that is in just a bit. But before we get started, we just have a few things to go through. We'll be talking to Steve very shortly. Thanks, Steve, for being on Arctic Live. We have some housekeeping. We have some shout-outs. We get to go through the shape of the lesson, and then we'll dive into the science and science careers up here in the chilly north. So, housekeeping. Questions. We've got some amazing questions. We've got 33 questions already through. You have obviously, most of you, found the chat box, which is beside the video on the web page. If you are showing that video full screen at the front of your classroom, don't forget that you can also do the chat on a second device like a smartphone or a tablet. Because we have so many fantastic questions today, please consider upvoting questions that you like that have already been submitted. And you can do that by clicking on the thumbs up icon next to each of the questions. We'll try and answer questions in order of the number of thumbs ups they have received. Last, if you have any technical issues, then you will need to click the green chat icon in the bottom right hand corner of each page of the Encounter EDU website. That will get you through to technical support. So please keep the technical questions through the support chat, and then all the wonderful comments and questions from classes that goes into the chat box. Before we get started, Steve, I think we've got some shout outs to give to some of the watching classes. So we've got a big shout out to students at Sir William Stenier School. Hi to everybody there. We've got greetings from Fireflies and greetings to Fireflies, and they are at Winsley Church of England Primary School. So hi to all the students there. We've got a lovely note all the way from France, from Collège Pierre de Belém. And it's, hello, dear scientists. We are in France and we are happy to meet you. We're very happy to meet you too. We like a lot studying the Arctic Ocean, and thanks to answer our questions. So we'll do a bit on the ocean, and also I know you're on the glacier as well. So we'll give them a full Arctic mix. A big shout out to the Grange Primary School and they are in Bootle in Liverpool, LGS Stonygate, Year 5. And a big exclamation mark to Mr. Warner. We will find out why Mr. Warner has an exclamation mark today. But massive hello from the Arctic. And Amaya, fabulous Maya, who is going to pursue a career in science and is currently homeschooled. So, Steve, we today are introducing all these fabulous young people to a potential career in science, find out what it's about, and then answer some questions along the way. I know that they have access to a sort of note-taking sheet where they can look at sort of what you normally do, the types of tools you use. We'll get also some questions at the end, what you studied, how you got into it, hobbies, all that kind of stuff. Wow. But you've got that student sheet just to take some notes along the way, and at the end you can see whether you've got that full picture of a science career. But let's get started. Steve, you're a microbiologist. Yes. Okay, so that is someone who studies microbiology, and there seem to be sort of three words in there. There's micro, there's bio, and there's logy. What's going on with those three words?
Well, micro is really small, so things you cannot see with your naked eye. Bio is biology, life all around us. Microbiology is study of those things.
You are a studier of tiny life.
That's right.
It's life you can't see with the naked eye. And I think we've got some examples of some of the life that you may have come across on your research. We have something called cyanobacteria. We've got a picture, I think. Is that like the bacteria that makes us sick, or what kind of size is this?
Well, no, those are bacteria that live out there in the world. They live in water, they live in soil, they live in lichens and a lot of different symbiotic relationships with other organisms, and they're photosynthetic. So that means they take sunlight energy and use that to make their bodies, basically, using carbon from the atmosphere.
Well, that's pretty cool. And so they get eaten at all, or something sort of munches them. They are the sort of the lettuce of the microscopic world.
Yeah, they're the plants of the microscopic world, definitely.
And then sort of what's next up, and in terms of I mean, we might have we've got this sort of single-celled animal.
Yeah, you've got protists or protozoa that basically feed on smaller microorganisms, and some of them eat cyanobacteria, some eat other little bacteria.
Perfect. And then this is one of my favorites. Either tardigrade or water bear. Is this something that you've come across on your studies?
Yeah, amazingly, we find tardigrades almost everywhere.
Everywhere.
On glaciers, in sediments, high on mountains. They're just tough little guys who can dry out and then come back to life really easily. They're pretty amazing about
dry out and come back to life.
Yeah, they can dry out completely as little cysts, and then if you add water, they come back to life.
That sounds absolutely...
And a lot of microbes can do that.
Yeah. A lot of microbes can do that. Amazing. That sounds absolutely amazing. You're studying all these tiny creatures, these tiny creatures that have been around for a fairly long time.
Yeah, billions of years.
Billions of years, because I reckon that the classes watching may think if we think of really, 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 really old animals, then we're thinking about dinosaurs. But this is taking it way back.
Yeah, way, 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 way back. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've got a bit of a challenge here. Where possible, we're going to do something on your height in the classroom. We're going to use your height as a ruler for life on Earth. If as many of you as possible can stand up, and we'll take you through from the sort of feet to the top of the head, if that's okay. So, life beginning sort of on Earth at your feet. So we'll start at your feet to the top of your head. It's about 4 billion, 3.5, 4 billion years.
Yeah, right around that. Yeah.
And what I've been sort of reading is that sort of bacteria aren't really happening until about 1 billion years ago, or is that?
Well, no, there were bacteria. Probably, we don't know because they don't fossilize very well. So, but there's signs of cyanobacteria that you showed that are maybe almost 3 billion years old. Okay,
so in the history of life on Earth, you get your knees, like from your feet. This
coming up,
you get to your knees, and there's bacteria. Okay. Then something we can kind of recognize, we might have some sort of jellyfish, some sponges and jellyfish around your sort of mid-chest.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And then fish at your neck, and dinosaurs and fish really sort of in your sort of mouth, nose area. And then if you think about the whole of life on Earth, the history of life on Earth, you get to sort of birds and mammals sort of in your sort of forehead type stage. Primates.
Way up there. Yeah.
Way up here. So gorillas and chimpanzees way up here, and probably humans, Homo sapiens. There's sort of a couple of hairs on your head, if that. So if we think about all of the life on Earth, you're studying the tiny stuff, and that's been around the longest. If you think about, if you study people, you're studying hairs. In terms of time, if you're studying what you study, at least you're going from your knees.
Yeah.
Or maybe a bit lower.
Even lower, probably, but yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, going way back.
Going way back. And I think that, like, certainly when I grew up, I had this idea of a biologist going to rainforests and places like that where there's lots of life. That diversity, all the stuff going on. You don't do that.
No, I don't do that. No.
Why have you chosen, as a biologist, not to go somewhere where there's lots of life?
I I don't know. I think just growing up, I lived in deserts and places that were dry, and I just loved that. And I think I just wanted to know how things live in like a really harsh environment, dry and cold and high elevations. And even as a young child, I was fascinated by mountains, big mountains. So,
Big mountains.
yeah. So,
And you've been to some of the biggest, or near some of the biggest
yeah,
mountains.
yeah. We studied in the Himalayas, the Andes, the Hindu Kush, the Alaska Range, Mount Denali. I've been to most of the big mountain ranges on Earth. Yeah.
I'm just sort of getting a sense, having been through some of these regions myself, is that is life simpler up there? Is it almost like a natural laboratory to study these sort of simple life? You don't have too much going on.
Yeah, there's more life than you might imagine, and a lot of it is life that's not always active, like the tardigrades, that we talked about earlier. That a lot of the year it's too cold for activity, but they can wait. They're dormant. We say they're sleeping, kind of like hibernating, and yeah. So there's a lot of life there, but it's may be active only a short period of time each year.
Amazing, because we've got photos of the glaciers, which are it's a better view because we were out on a boat, so we could sort of look in behind us. But when I look at that glacier or glacier, depending on where we're from,
Yeah.
that looks completely lifeless to me. But you study the life in here.
Yeah. We studied life in and on glaciers and around glaciers, and we studied cryoconite holes, which I think you'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, that's and one of the reasons we study them is because glaciers. Is that how you say it?
Glaciers.
Glaciers are disappearing around the world because of global warming, and we want to study some of the things that live there before they're all gone, because there may be biotechnological applications of things that nobody knows about yet. And so, yeah, but also we're part of the study and is of what we do is to also try and find out what's going to happen when the glaciers are gone. Like they're moving back uphill and they're leaving behind new land, and how biological life colonizes that land is a big question. And especially at high altitudes and high latitudes.
So we've got a picture of this glacier retreat, and it's certainly happening to the glaciers here, which is why I think you've chosen.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah,
here as a study area. So as the ice retreats, that's land that hasn't seen life for tens of thousands of years, possibly.
Sometimes longer. Yeah,
sometimes longer,
depending on where. Yeah.
Is that sort of almost like a new planet, and we're seeing sort of how life starts?
Yeah, it's been scraped down to rock in a lot of places, bedrock, and so it's like the early Earth in some ways. There's no plants there already. There's no organic matter or the stuff you would see in soil. Yeah.
And what I find amazing is that you've got this side by side photograph, which shows sort of 10 years after a glacier has sort of retreated and exposed this dirt, rock, soil to sort of the atmosphere for the first sort of 10,000, 20,000 or more years, and then you got one which is like 90 years.
Yeah.
Sort of, probably wasn't the same person who took who sort of was there sort of 90 years ago and there 10 years ago. But you've measured as the glacier has gone back, right. And it's almost does it give you a sort of like a time lapse sequence as it retreats?
Yeah. As long as you kind of know how fast the glacier's been retreating, you can estimate how old each patch of dirt is, basically. And so we call it a chronosequence. Chrono meaning time and sequence meaning sequence, I guess. Yeah. So that's kind of a weird word, actually, chronosequence. But anyway, yeah, you can tell how old something is based on historical photographs and documents. And so it's very useful for studying the succession of life that comes in to these systems.
And what might classes watching be able to see it in the sort of left-hand photo versus the sort of right-hand photo?
Well, in the left hand, that's like, this is in Peru in the Andes. And even after 10 years after the glaciers retreated, there's no visible life there because this is very high elevation. But by 90 years, you have crusty microbial biofilms have formed on the soil. And you even have little mosses and tiny little plants that have grown there. So it's taken that many years for these things to colonize and basically turn it into more like soil, or what we call soil.
And we have this idea of, you know, the planet having gone from sort of bare rock to sort of really lush rainforest, although some of that is going, but that's a whole nother reason and class. This idea of primary succession, can you sort of briefly explain to students who may think, well, you know, to get a tree to grow, you just dig a hole and you put a tree in it, or you put a seed in it. It sounds like it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, because right after the glacier leaves, you don't have soil. And that's what you're usually planting stuff in, is what we call soil, which is buildup of plant debris and organic matter to make this rich stuff that plants like. But for the first 100 or so years at least, it's still rock and sand, basically. And it takes time for that to break down through the action of different microbes to make soil. They actually make soil, but it takes a long time.
So the microbes make soil.
Yeah.
Some of the microbes we've seen already, or new microbes?
Well, the cyanobacteria are really important because they are the little teeny plants that can take in carbon and add it to the soil early on. And they also can take nitrogen out of the atmosphere, which is another important thing. So they're adding nutrients, and that eventually allows bigger and bigger things to grow and feed on them, like we talked about. And then eventually these dead bodies and everything builds up into soil. That's what soil really is. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort.
So if we're talking about sort of 100 years maybe to get to sort of lichens and small plants.
Yeah.
Do we know how long it sort of takes to do this whole sort of journey?
Well, yeah, it depends on where you are or on the Earth. Like here, it will probably never get to trees because it's tundra based. You know, yeah. There's no.
There are no trees in the Arctic.
Yeah, there's no trees up here. Maybe there will be with global warming, but right now the end point is just tiny little plants we call tundra because it's just so cold and so far north. And that's the same with the mountain areas that we study. They will never become a rainforest until there's huge climate shifts. They can go millions of years and you still just have stubby little plants. Just because it's so harsh. Yeah.
Amazing. And just to then to come on to the sort of practice of, you know, finding out, because I imagine that you do some work in a laboratory or university and you do some work in the field to come and actually get your data and see what's changing. We've got some photos from the work in Antarctica, which I think are looking at how life begins in ice.
In ice, yeah. So this work is we're trying to understand how when sediments or
so dirt
dirt gets on a glacier, it absorbs light and it actually sinks into the glacier and melts. And anytime anything melts, you can have microbes living because they need water. So we're trying to study how the microbes colonize the ice and this dirt on the glaciers, and how they bond together as a community and form as a community, acting together to make a complex ecosystem. And this is our tiny little ecosystems, basically.
And when we talk about community, students may have come across that word or know about the concept if they've studied a food web.
Oh, okay.
That's probably where they've come across it. I mean, we need all these different parts to sort of to create this more complex array of life.
Exactly.
And I mean, this is what's I mean, this is a picture of in down in the dry valleys.
This is in the dry valleys of Antarctica, and that's a glacier, a large glacier, and we're doing experiments there where we add different microbes and in different orders, and to see how that affects the final community that they form. And it actually has a big effect, like who gets there first makes a big difference, even on a glacier.
What's it like working? What's it like working there?
It's amazing to work there because that's the dry valleys, and it's a lot like here. It's a beautiful area, but it's even drier than here in the Arctic, and it's also less windy, I think. So it makes it. But there's some days you can't stand up because of the wind. So yeah.
I think this is another part of your experiment. I'm not sure whether you can what part of the experiment this was.
Well, so this experiment was fairly complex in that we were adding our own communities to the glacier, and we needed to be able to go back years later and find the same spot again. And this is a precision GPS system, so that with down to centimeter scale, we could find the same cryoconite hole in the glacier. Because you got to remember, the glacier is also moving. Glaciers are active. This glacier is moving 7 meters a year at that point.
Okay.
So that's hard to find the same hole again that way.
I think just to sort of come back to sort of where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, you're heading down these glaciers in terms of the research. What kind of research will you be doing over the next few weeks?
So this is an experiment at the forefront of this glacier where we're trying to understand how microbes are colonizing, moving into this area as the glacier retreats. And we're working with a bunch of geophysicists who study the physical properties of these new soils that are forming. And I'm a microbiologist, so I'm just tagging along to study the life, but they're measuring all kinds of things using very complicated instruments that they've embedded in the soil. And we want to tell them, they want to tell us how the environment's changing, and we'll tell them how life is changing as that environment changes. So we're trying to coordinate biology with physics and geophysics.
And not always the easiest place to work. You've been doing your polar bear safety training, your communications training, all those kind of things this morning.
That's right. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff you have to be prepared for, because there's polar bears wandering around. Not right now, maybe, but they're here a lot of the time, and plus the conditions can change suddenly, so you have to be prepared to survive
that probably adds a little bit of an edge. Do you take it in turns to watch for bears, or do you have a field guide with you?
We usually have one person who's always watching for bears. Yeah, and then usually there's 3 or 4 of us, and one person's sort of the bear watch, and then the other ones are doing the work, and we trade off the jobs.
Brilliant. I think Steve, thank you so much. I mean, I think we can come on to some other pieces in just a bit, but I think we can probably go now to some of the students'
Oh,
questions,
great,
and
great,
we'll
cool.
see. We'll see. Thank you so much for explaining that. For those watching, I know you've got so many questions about the Arctic, and I'm just going to give sort of Steve a sort of a get out of jail free card here. Is that when you're a scientist, you don't always know everything.
No, that's why you're a scientist, because you're trying to understand things.
But I know we've got a range of questions about science in the Arctic, and we'll do our best to answer them, or we'll be able to point to another source of information.
Yeah, yeah.
But to go through them, we have from LGS Stonygate, we have, are there any insects in the Arctic?
Yes, there are. We see them out near the glacier. Right now, you wouldn't find any insects, but there are even insects that live in glacier ice.
Really?
Yeah, they're called. I think they're called snow flies or glacier flies.
There we go. Snow flies or glacier
don't
flies.
quote me on the name.
Well, have a look. Have a look online and
Yeah,
see
yeah,
what you
yeah.
can find. Brilliant. From Sir William Stenier School, what is the hardest bit about your job?
Well, I love my job. I really do, and I think getting here is the hardest part because the travel is hard. It's always, logistical issues always come up, and it's an isolated area, and getting here takes a lot of different forms of transport. But once I'm here, I'm happy. I don't mind being cold. I don't mind being out all day if I have to be. So I think the hard part, I think if you like this kind of work, you kind of like being out there, whether it's cold or not.
Because your sort of love of nature,
Yeah,
and probably what drew you into this was you were talking. I think last night we were chatting, and you said that you sort of your family moved around a lot.
right.
You were sort of kind of dislocated in terms of friends or schools and that kind of stuff, and that being in the outdoors was what really sort of like kept you going and was your sort of spark
Yeah,
of
I think it
curiosity.
was my escape as a child, I think, and it turned into my life because I was out there just always curious about nature because I was always out there. So it's kind of a feedback loop. Yeah.
And I mean, did that then immediately? Well, and I'm just interested, just to give young people a sort of sense of how a career path can happen. Did that immediately? You thought, I know, I want to be a biologist, or was that a more gradual sort of sequence of events?
I think it was gradual because I didn't know I wanted to be a biologist. I didn't even know what a biologist was until I was in high school, probably. And um, I think I tried a lot of different things. And then once I realized I could actually maybe have a career studying something I was really interested in, that was when I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. But it took a lot of then.
And and in the US system, did that mean you made sort of academic choices along the way, or was it
Yeah,
something you came to later?
I think along the way, in the U.S., you can change paths fairly easily. And I was in college not really studying what I was interested in that much. I was just there because I didn't know what else to do. And I dropped out of school for a while and tried other things. And then I realized, yeah, I'm going to go back to school, but I'm going to study what I want to do. And that's what I did. Yeah. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
So even when the career sort of, I probably ought to go and do something, a proper job.
Right, right. Like my parents wanted me to, go into medicine or something like that. And I just wasn't interested. So I was a little lost for a while. But yeah.
You found your place.
Yeah, I definitely found my place. I'm lucky. I feel really lucky about that.
From LGS Stonygate again, asking how we get food up here, and probably in other places. How do you get food when you're sort of near Everest, Antarctica, the Arctic?
Yeah. Well, you always have to be either bringing it with you, like in the Himalayas, we have to plan ahead and have people help bring food for us, and we carry our own food. Here, this is a research station, which is like for a field biologist is luxury. We have like a cafeteria. I don't know if you call it that.
Canteen. We'll call it
yeah, okay. Yeah, so they fly in the food.
mainly shipped.
Oh, mainly shipped. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So most of the food will come in on the ship, and the harbour's just down. So people watching last week will have seen the harbour.
Oh, okay.
That's where the main food comes in. But the sort of tray of bananas and apples and oranges by the microwaves. This is really sort of niche stuff. That gets flown in, and there's there's a notice up saying, please respect the rest of the community. Only take one per day.
Yeah, yeah.
So our fresh, fruit and veg is really, really limited, because most of it comes in sort of frozen and dried goods coming in by ship.
Yeah.
This is from Collège Pierre de Belém, and it is, what is the most surprising event you've had in your job?
Oh, wow. The most surprising event. I think it was when one year in Alaska, we were working on a glacier. We had to camp down in the tundra, and we were gone all day up on the glacier. We came back to our camp, and it had been destroyed. And we found out later that grizzly bears in that area like to jump onto backpacker tents. They jump up backwards and land on them, and they like the feeling of the tent collapsing under them.
It's essentially you made a grizzly bear trampoline park.
Yeah. And then they also like to tear the feathers out of sleeping bags because they'll throw them up in the air. So everything was just destroyed. They didn't touch any food. They had just destroyed the camp.
What did you do? Did you have to sort of leave and go back and get kid, or?
We were like 10 miles from a road. It was raining. We didn't have tents or sleeping bags. We huddled under tarps that night. And the next day we got out of there, and the bears were still in the area. And so we were a little afraid, but they weren't really interested in us. They just wanted to destroy the camp for some reason.
Another question sort of about life up here is, do we have nurses on station?
I hear there's one nurse, and I met her yesterday. She gave me a COVID test. Yeah, but there's no doctor. So you have to pass a medical test, especially somebody my age. I had to get a bunch of tests because they don't want you up here if you're going to have a heart attack, or they think something bad's going to happen. So
I think it's illegal to die on Svalbard.
Yeah, probably
it is. That's good. It's against the law to die here, which is always good. And then about 20 minutes flight that way, there's a sort of small clinic with some nurses and I think a doctor. But the nearest hospital's in Tromsø, which is about 750 miles.
Yeah,
that way.
That takes a while.
So that takes a while. So we are quite isolated up here. This is just a very basic question. Polar regions. How do you go to the loo, and does it freeze?
It does freeze sometimes, yeah. And you go out where you are. I mean, and it depends on where you are. Some areas are protected; they don't want you going. Like in Antarctica, in the dry valleys, if you have to go, you have a bottle with you to pee in, and if you have to do the other, you have to
run down the glacier.
Yeah, or else take that. You have to take everything with you, no matter what you do. So because they're trying to protect that area. Here, I think you're allowed to pee in the tundra, but we wouldn't want to pee on the glacier. Say, yeah. So it depends on where you are. Yeah.
This is brilliant. This is from ISA Online from Aruba. Amazing. So we do our Coral Live from sort of next doorish from Curacao. And question here is, have you ever had frostbite?
No, I haven't. I'm lucky.
Frost nip?
I don't think so.
Well, that's when the skin sort of freezes.
Oh, I probably had that.
Feels a bit waxy with the bruised cheeks going on.
I've lost skin a little bit, but didn't hurt me too much.
Well, good. If you're getting frostbite, then you're probably doing something wrong because don't have the right kit. You're not looking after yourself. So there we are. What kinds of this is a great question. What kinds of microbes are you studying up here, and are they different because they're up here compared to other parts of the planet?
Well, mostly what we're studying here are bacteria and archaea. And archaea are another branch of life related to bacteria and related to bigger things as well that do weird things like make methane and eat sulfur. And so we're studying extreme organisms here that you might not see like in your backyard.
And is there a particular? Can you identify this as definitely an Arctic species, or how do they get here? Do they just? I mean, how did they get here? They might. I mean, did they fly? Did they? I mean,
so microbes are so small. A lot of these bacteria, and they make spores that are even smaller sometimes, and those are light enough that any wind will blow them up into the atmosphere, and they're circulating around the globe. We find some of the exact same organisms high in the Himalayas that we find here because they're blowing in the atmosphere. And some of them may even be living in the atmosphere. That's a debated question, whether they can actually grow in the atmosphere. But there's some really tough organisms that might be doing that. But they're also, nonetheless, they're globally distributed.
Amazing. This is a great question from Sir William Stenier School, which is, what do you miss about home when you're away doing fieldwork?
I think I just miss the calmness of home sometimes. Yeah, that I'm kind of a lazy person, quiet person, so I kind of miss just mellowing out. Sometimes it's hard when you're in the field to do that because there's always something going on. You have to be more careful.
Well, and also it's quite a sort of short amount of time. The luxury of being in the field is sort of like go.
You have to get so much done, and yeah.
So relaxation and calm, brilliant. Some lovely questions here. So this is from Amaya, asking, and this is particular to polar marine biology, but what can she be doing now to become a polar scientist, and what experience do you think that she might need in the future? And I suppose for anyone watching who's interested in doing polar science, what advice would you give to them?
I think I would definitely focus as much on science as you can, but also get a broad education. I mean, I think you'll be surprised at what things you might need as you go through life becoming a scientist. But the hardest part probably for a lot of students is that you need to take a lot of math courses. No matter what you do, you're going to have to do some computer coding. You're going to have to work with equations, and science is not, I mean, I'm lucky I get to do a lot of field work, but most of my work is writing, doing statistics on the data we get. And so math becomes very important. And plus, it just helps you think maybe as more scientifically sometimes.
And you spoke about passion and curiosity. Our previous speaker today again spoke about passion and curiosity as being super important, because it's not a sort of glamorous, well-paid career. Yeah. So is that what sustains you as you go through?
I think so. I think if I didn't really love it, I wouldn't do it, because given all the skills I have obtained to become a scientist, I can make more money doing other things, but I don't. That's never been my goal. So, and I love being able to do something I like to do. And
it seems that the payback is having this amazing life studying these amazing places around the world, which, other people, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, I think you were medic,
Yeah.
you might not have had the opportunity to.
Right. Yeah. And you think you might be able to do that kind of travel at some point in your life, but most people end up not doing it because they get so many commitments and such a job that's so demanding or whatever. So I think if you want to do it, start young.
Start young.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Some interesting questions. This is from LGS Stonygate, and is what do you live in? Do you live in an igloo when you're in the Arctic?
Oh, no. We live in a nice building here at this station. It's pretty basic, but it has a bed, a small bed, and for everybody, and you share a bathroom with other people. In the Himalayas or other places or the Andes, we live in tents. We bring our tents with us. It's like what we call backpacking. And there you always have help though from the local people. Like in Peru, we have the indigenous people we work with who help us get. They have horses. They'll carry all our gear for us to the field site. So and in that case, we live kind of with them, and they have a different lifestyle, which is really interesting because they're basically the descendants of Incans, and they don't even speak Spanish. Some of them, they speak Quechua.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Interesting question here is, the field site's that away. It's close, but not that close.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
Well, in the summer we walk from here, and it's, I don't know, 8 kilometers to the glacier. But now, this time of year, there are skidoos. Is that what you call them?
Skidoos, snowmobiles.
Snowmobiles, yeah. And so I just got here yesterday. So tomorrow we're going to go on the skidoo. I haven't been on a skidoo in many years, so I'm looking forward to that. That should be.
It comes back. I haven't been on a skidoo since 2017 until yesterday, isn't it?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah. Okay.
On the snow in the Arctic.
Yeah.
That great question now is from Alfie at Coningsborough Primary. Is scanning here. Have you seen a polar bear?
Yes, I was here last summer, and we saw several polar bears. And in fact, on this island, one of these little islands, you can see that one right there. There was a polar bear, a mother polar bear, and 2 cubs.
Amazing.
And they stayed there all day, and we were watching them through the scopes, and then they left at night and went around town and up another valley. But yeah, that was amazing. That was the first time I'd ever seen a polar bear.
And we have time, I think, for just one more question. Have you been for a swim?
No.
Will you go for a swim?
If I was younger, I think I would. But I'm a little afraid I might have a heart attack or something.
So, just to let you know, the sea temperature is still below 0 here.
I think so.
I think it's about -1. So and sea ice, where the sea freezes, doesn't happen until -1.8 degrees Celsius. Amazing questions from all of you. Steve, thank you so much for being part of Arctic Live. I've learnt about how life began on the planet. I've learnt how we can study that in cold, remote, dry places and high up places. I've just learnt so much about that bigger idea of biology and science, from sort of going to a rainforest and counting butterflies or something, or sort of tree species. It's been amazing. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to all the classes who've been watching. Until the next time, it's goodbye for now from Arctic Live. Goodbye.